people's opinions or modern spin or modern technique. So the digital Pali reader and how to use it. Basics of Buddhism, which are very grounded, basic things where people in Burma, particularly, they learn this stuff from when they're young or when they're priming, their children, their adults and parents introduce them to it. So for them, it's just like the back of their hands. It's a basic that they are really familiar with. Many formulas, the 4 this, the 5 that, the 6 this, the 7 this, that, they understand very comfortably and often isn't introduced to the newcomers, and they just start meditating straight away. And then it can be difficult to apply it socially, in family and society, community. So I want to introduce that. It's also that these things to share as well. People get thumb drives, then you can take it away and comb through it. Digital Pali reader, also access to insight. This one, let me zoom in on a couple of let's have a quick review over last week's as well. So just do a catch up for those who are here and those who weren't there. I'll zoom in on so we can more clear, but this is a map of the Tripitaka. The Tripitaka is the main Buddhist books, ancient ones. There are 10, 10, and 10 stories. So all together, those numbers are inaccurate. 13, 10, and 11. And these are 50, 50, 50, 50. So 50, 50, 50, 502. These are the long stories. So that's 13 long stories, 10 long stories. They include big ones like the death of the Buddha, the Parinibbana. So they're long stories, very involved. They have full of lots of things. So those are the long stories. These are medium length stories. So that's 50, 10 medium length stories, 10 medium length stories. I'll go into the 8th one to give you an example of the type of thing that's in there. And then the Sangnyutta, these are grouped. So in a group you might get 10 short poems with a bit of a story to them. So they're even briefer and quite colourful. Some other things I was looking at, I won't flick on because it's a bit of a blurry picture taking a bit far away. This is an important model, and it represents, this central box represents wholesome, healthy, regular lay life, social life, family life, a work life. So then this sort of pyramid here looks like a pagoda, represents the 3 levels of the practice. So it tends to leave a little bit behind lay life and go towards the sort of monastic and spiritual in the retreat life, with the first of all charity level, second morality level, middle level, most forms of concentration and meditation, and then the wisdom level. Then the very top is the nibbana level, it's where it's all aiming towards. And falling away from that, from the social, is the antisocial and the degenerative and dysfunctional this way, which is what the Buddha was trying to prevent people from falling into that. How like drug use, like views which increase problems and drag people into the wrong company, and wrong company like fighting people, gangster people, gamble, and people where you're likely to lose everything you've got in one way or another, reputation, money, or health, etc. This is important core teachings. So there's the outer teachings, how it works with the world, and then the inner teachings, just simply what goes on behind your skin when you're meditating. So the inner teachings, it doesn't mean esoteric or secret, it just literally refers to the meditational internal side. Dependent origination, very important, how things are caused by other things. When I say things, how the perceptions form states of mind, how how states of mind determine what the sort of things we select and how we react to them, and what feelings we get, and how we react to feelings with grasping and craving, how that causes karma. So there's 12 stages of dependent origination. The 5 aggregates teaching, how people are made up with these 5 different sections: body, feelings, perception, states of mind, and 6 sense doors. But Buddha taught these as core teachings again and again and again throughout his 45 years. Four Foundations of Mindfulness, the Satipatthana of how to anchor mindfulness, and where within the experience, and again, I'll go into this more, Eightfold Path. So this relates to these 3 sections, 3, 3, 2, the Eightfold Path, 3, 3, 2, 3 things: livelihood and lifestyle, speech, actions. That's the first 3. So how those need to be governed with morality, and the next 3, the middle group, the concentration group or samadhi group, right form of mindfulness, governing concentration, right concentration and right energy, effort, use. So those 3 need to cooperate together with the morality section. And then the top 2, right view or purified, clarified view, and the right aim. Important thing. The Buddha also was meticulous about identifying what all these different things mean. Like he identified 62 wrong views, and the Buddha didn't have like a view which was an opinion, which he went to war with him and squabbled with people about. It's not like that. So details will come out as we go through it. With all these kind of things, the 12 stages of dependent origination, 5 aggregates, 4 foundations of mindfulness, Eightfold Path, are sometimes taught as formulae, as these numerical formulae, and they're also cloaked in character stories. And then it's not just enough to say jealousy arises dependent on this and causes this effect. It's told as a characterized story, often from the Buddha's actual own life. His cousin was very jealous, or there's people within houses who get very jealous of each other and something happens, and that story unfolds, and he explains about that. We've got the Digha Nikaya, these 3 volumes, one book with 13, 10 and 11 stories within it. And then there's the Majjhima Nikaya. It's made up of 3 sections with 50, 50 and 52 suttas or stories. And sutta means a thread. Then the Samyutta Nikaya is usually packaged as one book, and it's got 5 sections in like that. Then we've got the Khuddaka Nikaya, which is a treasure trove of many, many things that are famous, like the Dhammapada books are kept in there. King Milinda's Questions, which I want to go into, which is where a Greek Bactrian king and met an arahant who was full of puzzling questions and kept demanding of the arahant to explain. And the arahant does a very good job of precisely answering them, very witty and accurately. So they then, good questions that tend to crop up as people go along the path, about rebirth, about consciousness, soul, karma, many, many things. The Jataka stories, past lives of the Buddha, but also just animated stories of talking animals, basically. Or allegories, allegorical stories. Many of them, more than 500. The Hungry Ghost stories and the Heavenly Mansion stories, and the Buddha Vangsa, Buddha Chronicles of the previous Buddha. So that's just a quick snap of what we went over last time. And some tools for doing it. One is the digital Pali reader. Another one is called Access to Insight. This is more modern. This one's full of Pali, the original, but it's got the originals in that you can click through. Just as a brief review of what we were looking at last week. So this is a miniaturization of a famous sutta, and it's called the Mangala Sutta, bit blurry again. people went to the Buddha and asked him what causes good luck, and they already debated for 3 months about what causes it, like a black cat crossing your path or not opening an umbrella in the house and all the thing. And the Buddha said in the end, let's go ask the Buddha. And then he said these 38 things lead to good fortune and good luck in the future. Not associating with fools, associating with wise, honoring the worthy, having a suitable place prepared where you can meditate and you can have peace and keeping them good, area where having done past merits, so always be doing good merits, so you can always look back and see a train of keeping the body and the mind well, just basically clean health of eating and sleeping and living. Learn much, and so on. So there's 38, and they're divided like the Eightfold Path, half into Sila, means the morality and lifestyle group. So all of these leading up to here, the 21, and then attitude and the Samadhi group, the mental culture, meaning the meditational or concentration group, like respect, humility, contentment, cultivating gratitude, cultivating listening to the Dhamma, cultivating patience and obedience, and then practice. So culture of meeting people who have practiced, who have already got calm, and discussing the Dhamma with them, practicing itself actually going on retreat and putting time in on the cushion, sensual restraints, learning and understanding the Four Noble Truths, which includes attainment of nirvana, and then what this leads to, security and contentment. So the Buddha, that's the way the Buddha taught how to create good fortune in the future. This is a very quick sketch I made just to outline the content of the Buddha Vangsa, the Chronicles of the Buddha, very quickly. And just more or less that from here down to there is the life of the Buddha. And then he spent his 5th year as a monk, 7th year as a monk. So those chapters all cover those periods of his life. I've got a better sequel than this one, but these are the previous 24 Buddhas before our Buddha, and there from here it talks about the conception of the Buddha, the birth of the Buddha, the first time he got a meditative jhana as a young child, and then stories about him growing up there, the archery contest and getting the throne and renouncing the kingdom, his learning and his study time, and then him leaving and enlightenment. And then it's how he started to establish his teaching. And then this is his 5th year of teaching, the 6th year of his teaching, 7th and 8th, and what happened. So this whole chapter will be on what happened during that year. And then it's other things like, including I'll go into it on the later diagram, but that's about the Chronicles of the Buddha Vangsa. Details about female arahants, details about male arahant. Arahant is a fully enlightened person, so there's 13 fully enlightened bhikkhunis. And I can't remember the number of male ones. Then about there are many details. I won't go into it too far. This is a treasure trove book I was telling you about, which is about the basic Buddhist great culture at the Panditarama of the main schools in Burma. So it starts talking about basics like taking refuge, meaning like when you go to ask actually to take the Buddha as a refuge and the Dhamma as a refuge, Sangha as a refuge. And the things are taken very much for granted that people know them in Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, countries like that. But this is where you can find a huge collection of exactly how it's done and where the comments on it, because there are Thai people or various people just wave it away, well, understand that stuff, but often people haven't heard it yet. So other things like benefits of enlightenment, like 9 qualities of the Buddha, 6 qualities of the Dhamma, 9 qualities of the Sangha. You often hear those referred to, 969. And karmic effects, consideration of action and results. So this actually goes into things like what happened what is the actual direct consequence of killing? What are the sort of like 10 results that happen in future life? Or stealing. It goes into the things to consider, 10 unwholesome courses of action. So I won't go into detail. This is the style of book which I'm recommending as well. Not everyone recommends this sort of thing. Often they read good new things or YouTubing modern things. I think this works very, very well to get people very strong foundation, and it's very dependable. These books were written by people who already memorized the 84,000 books in the Tipitaka and compiled it, knowing the whole thing. Often people do 3 or 4 years of a bit of meditation, they go off, start teaching. They haven't even seen this stuff. For some of them, they've only just browsed it, a very superficial knowledge. So this was constructed by people with very deep knowledge, and this was given also as a gradated system. So this is very suitable to start off. This is the Mangala Sutta, the one I showed you, the wheel with the 38 blessings on, and starts going through explaining each one of them. Training for novices, talking about gradually increasing numbers of precepts and how they go. I don't want to go to this revision of last week. So there's 75 rules of training. This is taken from the monks' rules. So there's a sort of gradual increase of complexity of understanding, codes, of guidelines which undertake, not put on. There are some absolutes as well, things that you can absolutely get chopped out for. The monk has sex with a bhikkhuni, that's it, you're out and you can't come back in again as well. So things like that we do need knowing, and that people often aren't told clearly. Lots of these things are covered, these are huge divisions of time. These are 4 divisions of hell realms, which are given quite some detail in certain places, and all good stuff to at least read several times, or at least have read and be familiar with, having met it before, zooming off and practicing too far up ahead. So you heard the 10 immoral actions mean the first 3 precepts, and the first killing, stealing, and then immoral conducts, and then the 4 types of speech. So this is rape, pedophilia stuff. Then the next 4 to make up to 7 are the 4 types of speech: wrong, lying, deliberate misinformation, and then slander, and then harsh and vulgar speech, and then nonsense talking. So these are physical action, a physical killing, to physically do adultery, or 4 speeches, so that makes it 7, and then 3 types of mind action: hate with mind, and then greed by mind, and then ego, conceit by mind. So these are the 10 immoral actions. And then 40 is because you have something that you do it yourself. Secondly, prompt somebody else to do it. Just nudge them and encourage them and say, you can do it. Is you actually sign something, you're not there, you just leave an order and some does it, you pay them and they go on in a helicopter and they're going to kill someone, but you signed the order, and it's more indirect. And then fourthly, glamorizing. People who make James Bond movies, glamorizing, gambling, killing. So just to fill you in on some of the things like that for practice of harmony, is to treat people as equal. Smooth speech, not using harsh speech. Things like that. So many of these formula contain lots of little gems that are, I say, familiar to Buddhists who know their Buddhism, they're born in Buddhism, they're considered Buddhist, they're proud of being Buddhist, blah, blah. They've got no qualms. They call themselves Buddhist because they've heard all this, and they also know what constitutes practicing it or not. So the guidelines are really clear, and then the choice can be really clear. not be interested in it. Becoming a Buddhist, but like meditation, find drifting in, so then get into these hazy areas. So all of that starts getting clear more the more you look at this ground frame understanding. This, the advice to Sigala, is a key sutta that describes many things to do with how to behave in order to not fall into debt and lose wealth and fall into the wrong kind of company, in which case you would get loss of many things. And so it goes through many of the formulas, 4s, 6s and 5s, and it's a very big matrix that you can refer to for polluting actions, which I said, like killing, the first 4 precepts, down to speech, and then 4 evil ways, which is like greed, hate, ignorance and fear, and then 6 causes of misfortune, gambling. So they all go and gone. I'm going into these later, so just introduce you to this book, and from then on it starts with the actual book. But this is just an index to show the kinds of things that are really strongly recommended when people want to get a good ground plane understanding that is a good preparation for developing further. A lot of people plow off into a Vipassana retreat without knowing any of this stuff, or coming up against it, encountering it. Yes, who doesn't? Like many people, so it's just like, they describe it like building the 3rd floor of a building before, employing an architect to build a 3-story house. And they come and they say, what about the 3rd floor? What about the first 2 floors? And they wonder why it keeps crashing down. Yeah. And then they wonder why it keeps crashing down. And then they sack the architect. So this week we covered the timeline. This is the schools out of South. So 450 BC kickoff, Buddha gets enlightened, starts ordaining the first 5 people, and so on. It starts proliferating in the early Buddhist schools. So this is pre-sectarian era. I talk about then the formation of the Theravada about 250 years BCE. So the Theravada then runs consecutively up to the present day. Changes and additions and cultural flavorings and actual distortions and divisions start happening, with Chan in Thailand and Pure Land and Zen start changing in quite a lot of different things. Tibetan Buddhism had quite a lot of different things, but it fuses with Lamaism, and then some major things with the Vajrayana also major, like monks can have sex, then they have sort of tantric rituals and like this. So, the Buddha was very, very clear when he was setting down his teachings here about some of those things. It's a no-no for monks in that case. And the emphasis in Mahayana of never ever getting enlightened until everyone's free, for example, this kind of thing. So there's some big, big differences and things that start to happen. So Buddhism, Greco-Buddhism, then there's the Theravada. So that's just to give you a sort of like timeline, basic, without going too far into it, because it's not a huge thing. When we start getting into questions of Melinda, we start to see how timelining isn't that important. About the questions that come up are timeless. Questions of Skill, very good book, covers many good things, and it also teaches us how to ask questions, which is, we're all starting from somewhere about this. So questions, we start off, there are tool to work with, sword that you use. The more that the sword of inquiry is held with the hand of wisdom, mindfulness and concentration and effort, the more we'll be able to use it as it's designed for. 3 divisions of the books, 3 baskets, Tipitaka, precepts, and Vinaya, which is the code of discipline, and everything about it, what happened to make them are all up. 2, all the suttas just showed you that sort of elephant footprint, flower pattern. And thirdly, psychonumerical, the Abhidhamma, which is an enormous 7-volume thick about the subdivisions of all the mental constituents and how they interact with each other. This is what one of the things the Buddha was most admired for, was that they say it was such a difficult thing. Said it's like taking a scoop out of the Ganges, taste the water and say precisely where all the different elements of water came from. That all comes from here, from Himalaya. That one comes from the Rana. That one comes from such and such. To be able to divide out experience and say our perception, that how many factors that links to consciousness, and consciousness links to the sense door. How he was precisely able to do it accurately and completely without any speculation. I think I probably covered that board, which was more or less an overview, what we covered last week. Yeah. Okay, leave that on for now. Moving on to this week's Grizzly whiteboard. So these three things, the dependent origination, blurry photo again, dependent origination, 5 aggregates, and the 4 foundations, these are core deep teachings, the core of the Buddhist teachings, not our core. They are ways that things are dependent on other things. And if we understand which step came from which step, and when it happened, which footstep was on where, we can start to also be able to undo existential suffering. That's existential suffering, and works by misunderstanding how these states co-cause each other, co-depend on each other. It's often shown as 12 stages, 8 stages, 5 stages. There are many very simplified formula, and they're very complicated formula. Even this one, with 24 conditions, is a version of it, of sorts. Okay, so the Buddha also didn't teach it like a circle, first of all. He just had someone coming up to him and saying, how come everyone's so fighting so much? He said, because they're jealous of each other. They said, why are you jealous? He said, because they're possessive of things. Why do they possess things? Because they like things. And why do they like things? This is called Sakka's questions. The King Deva, and they say, why are they fighting? They never stop. They're all doing in the celestial realms as well. All the devas, they're all squabbling and stuff as well. He was asking, the Buddha said, he was very calm. He said, why is everyone doing this? He actually starts just by teaching as a verbal thing, not showing it as a diagram. And Sakka gets more and more intrigued and says, and then. That's actually the first description of the dependent origination, I think. I'm going to it in more detail. It's easier if there's the 5 aggregates: body, feeling, perception, states of mind, and the 6 sense doors and their awareness. It's easier to understand this when we look at the way that they are formulated the rules, actually. I'll explain what I mean in a minute. This one is the 4 foundations of mindfulness: body, feelings of the body on the pleasure scale, and this pleasure scale, stress, tension, goosebumps and ecstasies on the body and skin, like a massage. The mind getting pleased, the mind staying neutral, the mind getting displeased, just that factor of it, not more involved. State of mind, jealousy, that's got a whole characteristic of itself, its own. Hatred, and I'll give you the full picture of what the states look like, but just to show you what the simple division is. And then the 4th foundation are lots of formulae, such as the 4 kinds of effort that you have to make, or the 5 hindrances, or the 5 aggregates, is in the 7 factors of enlightenment. So these are actual crystalline structures that are worth considering about. They're not so analytical. There's a list of those. Eightfold Path is in there. Just wanted to show you about these. Wherever you go in the Theravada school, you keep coming back to these. This here. So it's just missing one, which is the very simplified version of this when it's put out in a line like this. And I'll go into that. This is a detailed version I made of something that's missing in my opinion, mainly because in the original days, people spoke like I'm speaking. They didn't have this. They spoke. So they would list things and then people would write the things and then lists just stay as lists. So I've taken some of the lists and I put it back as a graphic. Remember, I know it looks overwhelming with trillions of things, but so does Manila when you're first flying in. Sooning you sort of like learn your way around the map. So just tell you what about this. This is a combination of the Four Foundations of Mindfulness without too much of the fourth one, because the formulas, you don't need too much initially. So this represents body experience. So when you're meditating, you're concentrating on the body. You might concentrate on the air of the nose. You might also notice it in the throat. You might notice it in the belly rising and falling, or in the chest. So breath is body. The experience of the body, whether it's pressing on the floor with the feet, on the bum on the chair, or leaning on something, or just the presence of the skeleton standing, and so on. We know about it through hardness, just where the bones press on the inside of the skin, from the temperature of the body, of all the skin, sponginess of the muscles, and all the jellies and the greases and the liquids and everything, and the movement of the body. So just by your awareness, seeing all those things happening as flux or staying static for a while and then moving and changing, that's how we know the body's there. And these are written there as sponginess, temperature, hardness, and movement, because it's nice and simple. When you see it as the four elements, it starts to become something a bit more esoteric: air, earth, fire, and water. But that is often used as those four elements. We're also aware of the standing, the walking, the sitting form, and the laying form. And then there are all sorts of transitions in between, like swallowing, blinking, turning the head, reaching for something, laying down, open, reaching for a door. So these are just transitions. I just put a few in, but there's billions of those: going to the toilet, turning the remote control on, anything. There's also two conceptual ways of doing it. That's looking at pictures of corpses or actual corpses, to reduce lust, but also to look at the nature of the body from a new perspective, not to just be going off on a sort of in love with your own body, to get dispassion from it. The other way is anatomical, 32 parts of the body: hairs of the head, eyebrows, skin, teeth, eyes, eyelashes, waxing the ears, step by step, going through the body, step by step by step by step. And that's one way of getting this objectivity to the body. So the first one is first foundation, is body. So it's used in both the 5 aggregates and in the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The second one I went briefly over earlier is the feelings, Vedana, now, which is neutral or pleasant or to goosebumps, and then down to tension and pain. And all day long, it's moving up and down, or appearing and disappearing, appearing and disappearing. And then the mood of the mind, where it's pleased, irritated, neutral, pleased, irritated, neutral, deeply displeased, troubled, desperate, blissful. Going from, so those two are called the second foundation of mindfulness. And they're also the second of the khandhas, of the aggregates. Skandha, if you're in. This one is the 5 aggregates, is the third one. It's perception, but perception to say that's a such and such screen made by such and such, you'd be recognizing it. So you'd be comparing it using your memory. We'd say that's cedarwood or whatever it is, and you'd be comparing it and you'd be dragging up from your memory and recalling. So the way that perception, identifying, comparing and investigating, assessing and judging and summarizing and interpreting and misinterpreting all happens in that group, which in the khandhas is the third one. So also includes reading and general knowledge and learning skills and social strategies and all sorts of tons of things in there. It's a huge, vast thing. Everything you ever learn from school basically comes up. So you can say, yes, that's called such and such in Italian, whatever it is, or think about it mathematically or something. Perception. So in the khandhas, it's the third one, and then this is the fourth. Yeah, that would be the fourth. If it's the four foundations of mindfulness, these get clubbed together. So very briefly, I won't do the whole thing here. These are always running. This is the focal area. So where you're, if your eyes are concentrating on the screen, that's your focal area. If you want a cup of coffee, you're looking then at the price on the till, back to the cup. So this thing we call the focal area, and it can be with your ear, concentrating on your body, concentrate on the little toe. So it's a focal area. Attention decides which of the 6 sense doors you actually go to. Hearing, seeing, body, hearing, seeing, thinking, attention, intention. So the actual intention. And then this one's just a battery pack of life. Jivitindriya, the brain and the heart going. So all of these stop, and this one's the person's still alive. These sometimes arise and then vanish. Aiming. So if you do aim at your little toe, you have to actually have that one there. Then you forget about it and it's gone. Or when you were concentrating on Starbucks till, aiming was there and that switched off. So switch on, switch off. Sustaining attention. If it's not just a price on the till, it's a reading. Then sustaining is there. And these applying in meditation as well. This one says effort. And so it's actually the effort to, anytime the mind has effort in, I'm not going to get up, I'm going to do something. Effort is in there as well. So these three might come up together with an intention and then vanish. But these will keep running and changing their objects all the time. And then they have decision. So actually, execute, do. So you have this will come up, otherwise it will just hover without decision. It will just keep aiming and considering for a while. It says, before it says do it. Interest, or also this is absence plus interest, absence of interest, makes a big, right, willpower. So those are the tools of the mental states. And so this will be accompanied by this stuff going on. Right, so those are always running since you wake up in the morning. So even when you're dreaming, slightly running. So they're either accompanied by the good states of mind or the unwholesome states of mind. So they're always, if they're unwholesome states of mind, like hate, they won't have any of these at that time. You'll just have this unmindfulness, agitation. And then the two slacked off moral inhibitors. So when the inhibitors are there, you have this thing, you shouldn't do. There's a keen sense this is a wrong thing. And the other one is to actually put the brakes on and say stop. So if you want to say something about someone, or if you want to, comes in and says don't, just let it go. Those are these two here, hiri and ottappa. So in that case, collectiveness is there and mindfulness is there. So this is when mindfulness is at work. And then you might have confidence together with those. One of these will arise. Kindliness plus those two, which is the opposite of hate. Or if it's confidence, is the opposite of doubt. So these are all have their opposites. So I've numbered these to show you how they link. This is called the play of lions, where they train, you work to transform negative states like restlessness into equanimity, from desire into non-clinging, doubt into confidence, hate into kindliness, and so on, fed-upness into engagedness, energylessness into energeticness, wrong views like ego into right view, ignorance into wisdom, jealousy into joy at other people's success. But all of these states of mind have these qualities that go with it. The mind is correct, it's clear, skilled, flexible, controllable, has tranquility and lightness. And all of these have the opposites. Rigid, inflexible, disturbed, heaviness of mind, incapable of being flexible and those things. Quick introduction about those. So this is the states. When I refer to states, that's what it is. This is perception, and this is the third foundation of mindfulness. A brief introduction, can't go too deep into it. These are the 6 sense doors. So all the body is basically the skin when it comes down to the eye door. So this is the consciousness, this is the contact, and this is the eye organ, this is the object. So color, seeing, the organ contact. Three things coming together. That's called contact. Ear, so sound, objects. Ear organ consciousness means awareness of sound. Smell, taste. This one, concepts, I found that this was missing, was concepts tend to be images or sounds, just like you're sitting there and you hear words, or you remember a phrase that somebody said, or hear some music, or hear a chanting, or a commercial, a line of a film or something. So that's just this. So this is just to be a bit more specific on when people talk about thoughts, because you can have pure imagination like fantasies or dreaming, or you can have events that you remember that got involved in a sequence, or you can just have a flash memory of an environment or a place or a future, deliberately thinking about an interview that you've got, or planning and speculating or questioning people, places. So just to help people, and I got people meditating with this as a map, where they would actually sit and hold the thing in front of them like this, and then just actually, as things were happening with the eye, to actually touch it, and then planning. I was thinking about planning what's going on tomorrow, and like thinking about how to hate my dad. Okay, that's hate. Yes, we can have you can have a copy of this. Step by step, I just want to introduce to the usage of it. I did a retreat after quite a while with the same school of meditation, and afterwards I went to the teacher and I said, so you've got about 100 objects, haven't we? You know, with the body, there's this, that, and I went through them pretty much like that. I had a little paper sketch of it, and he said, yeah, got about 100. I said, why didn't you say so? Because you could give us a map, you know. And they have this as a list like this, in the page of the Abhidhamma books, 52 Jayatasikas. But nobody's done it, so I thought it was a missing gap, a very useful one. And the other thing is, so that's pretty much introduction to Kanda 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or first foundation, second foundation, third foundation. This is on the fourth foundation, but you find it buried in a load of these things like the 4 right efforts, the 4 steps to success, the 5 hindrances, the 5, and so on. So it's kind of buried away right over here somewhere. So a bit out the way. I took it over and put it there. The other thing I did was to combine it with the dependent origination, so that you can see this on here. It starts on this. Depending on perception, like you judge. So that person is my enemy. I used to think I like them, but I come to the conclusion they're up to something. So you assessing, you're judging. So doubt comes up. So this conditions this. So doubt about that person. And then that will affect these, going to thinking about their person. And then you get this irritated effect and maybe tension. So 1 conditions 2, 2 conditions 3, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're all coming together, which is this one. That conditions feeling. So dependent on that, you've got the irritation going on at that point because of the doubt state of mind and the agitation. So the next thing that happens is this craving that they didn't exist. Basically, it's not easy to write this, but this is craving sensation, or craving being, or craving not being. So in the case of it where you're closely associated with it, or you think as an enemy, either you don't want them to be there or you wish they didn't be there. So that's non-being, craving them non-being, or craving you non-being. So that only happens when you grip or you grasp them as an idea. You can't stop thinking about them, or grasp the idea that they're an enemy, and so on. So these two can then recondition this. And those 3 function. And they always arise together. Misinterpreting on the ignorance, and this creates a neediness, it creates an ego, it creates a resistance. I originally wrote this, but each one of these has the Pali word and about 4 descriptive words, so I've had to sort of squish them down, which is a bit hard enough to get it all on one page anyway. So there's a little bit about that, and these are available. That's why the slow walking and the sitting is you have this and you start to actually plot it, go, yeah, you can actually physically touch what's going on. I'm sitting, walk, ear, listening, irritation, blah, blah, blah. And then once that becomes familiar, like walking around this house, I've been to the Louvre, had a shower, been down, once you've got a roughly good idea where it is, so literally walking around this, you get, this is also pretty like complete. You don't actually need much more than this. There isn't a sort of like big question mark box down where they didn't really figure out the rest of it. It's all pretty complete. So it's kind of the meditation manual, code book. That's it. Once you get familiar with this, it will keep checking out again and again with all the different models that you more or less. McDonald's did a little bit in places with some of the terms, I put it, don't do it. It's something they will have, moral terror. What was your question? Yes. Yeah, so, if you're aware that right in the present moment you have absence of hate or absence of anger, you'll be aware of your kindliness levels, or presence and absence of things is a good way of monitoring. And this mindfulness of what's happening and what's present and what's absent is very important. One of the ways it's used, seeing a person and hearing what he's saying. Yeah, mindfulness of it. Once you're mindfulness that it's present and you've got the reactions on the go and what the constituents are, you can also use this backstepping to not let these overpower and dominate the mind. That's one of the main things. There's a lot on there. It's very simply, I've got a simplified version. I don't really want to go on too much. Now this will help, hopefully. I didn't want to go into quite as much detail as I did. When they made the rules, I was reading through the ancient old rules, 227. They used a really simplified coded system, which I want to show you, which helps to understand better that quite complex image. And they always, like a monk stole another monk's bowl or something. They go, right, come in, we want to talk to you. And they said, what was your object involved? What was it, the crown jewels? No, it was just a bowl. What was your perception? When they find out what was your perception was, and what was the effort, what was your intention, and what was the effort you did, and what was the result. So through that, you can see how afterwards, when they're working with this a lot, they started to build up those models which are more complex. So we only get the complex kind of finished models, bit like that one which I've done, which is a bit even simplified. So the object is important, an important factor. The perception of the object, intention that goes with the perception, with the object, and the effort, then the results. So things are analyzed in that way. Now, if we just take the second part, perception, and then put it on the circle, this starts how they've done with that linear form, the formula. Now they start to make it as a circle so that it can be seen as time passing. But it isn't only like a fan or a motor. A lot of people keep describing it like that, and it's pretty irritating because many of the things that are describing actually by this thing are. So, for example, perception arises with these two that are going to be simultaneously. If you've got any one of them, even a faint amount of them, all three of them increase simultaneously. And it's important that they don't run one after another. Otherwise, you spend it time. It's not like that. It's more important to understand also the relationships between them. So as people go along, not only immediately as they progress, so understanding we need to be able to see and realize that there are objects that are entering in the sense doors, or either as a thought or an actual material object. So we actually see something and think, I wouldn't mind one of those. The mind has already captured it. It's already perceiving it in some way as, a desirable object, or it looks really crap, or it's really, yours, or where can I get one? That sort of thing. So the way the perception generates or conditions the next bit, this is a simplified version of section 3 on that other one. And it's quite a good pattern to remember, not too difficult, is that if you have the unmindfulness, and these are like wanting, not wanting, sleepiness and disinterest, restlessness and doubt, those are the 5 hindrances. 5 hindrances are used in the Four Foundations. And then there's the opposites. So you have the opposite of hate and anger, which is metta, loving kindness. Opposite of desire, and greed, which is neutrality or generosity. But it's called the opposite of laziness or apathy and disinterest, which is engaged interest, passionate interest, enthusiasm, doubt, confidence, restlessness, calm, collectedness. And then these ones are jealousy, envy, and conceit, and ego views. So they have their opposites. But that pattern, if you remember that 5 and then 4, primarily it's these 10 unwholesome states we're dealing with, and they're 10 opposites. So perception governs this. These come linked, that causes that. So you can see how it's got this simultaneousness. Right, so just to continue. Someone said that this is really simple. And the Buddha told them, often said, no, it's not. He said, because of not understanding this, the whole generation that we're living in is entangled. And he said that in his time. So this represents the 6 sense doors. So with all of what's going on, that side of things, the intentions and the jealousies and whatever, awareness, this represents the 6 sense doors. Then you have your object outside. Just show you this is the way that the Buddha built it up. Contact happens, or contact is always happening. And it's always happening. And the other thing is that at this point, when people practice vipassana now, for example, noting like awareness of seeing, awareness of bending, awareness of the body, awareness of seeing, awareness of touching, that bypasses all of this. Perception, instead of judging and deciding on things and objects, perception just only links to exactly what awareness is happening. Simplified right down. So awareness of hearing, awareness of thinking, awareness of planning, bypasses all that. That's the purest kind of perception. Exactly what's happening. Awareness of his seeing, awareness of touching. Therefore, mindfulness arises and bypasses a lot of the problems that can happen from judging and things, labeling things. So then the body feelings happen on the pleasure and displeasure scale. And once those all work together, then craving and grasping and perception link up again, and the whole loop keeps going. So that's a brief. The Pali word is called bhavo. Bhavo, or bhava and bhavo, is used a lot. It means, so supposing I'm grasping the idea of a lotus, a lan, or whatever it is, or an iPod, the mind's grasping and craving that already inside develops an emptiness, or the missing soul partner or whatever, soulmate. So that emptiness and the potential for, like the planning, they're keeping a room spare is there. That's developed this thing through grasping a mental idea and a belief. So always So these three are called the round of defilements. And this one linking to this, because when these two are active, this one is generating this emptiness through which you're always separated from your object. And all of these states of mind having the same thing in common, that you're separated from your object in space and time. So if you desire something, you know the iPod is like separated from you. So you're already discontent, you're already agitated, and that's because this has happened, because this has happened, because that has happened, because that. So the more this is there, the more these arise up. And this is only here, this is the karma, the production of karma, seeds of karma is there. So if that isn't, misperception isn't, correct perception, craving and grasping don't happen, this one doesn't happen, therefore the wholesome states of mind, and these are always accompanied by contentment and unagitated. Right? Otherwise I'm going to get these. The last birth has already happened. Sixth birth already happened. Discontentment. That all of us can't escape illness, can't escape aging, can't escape pain, can escape loss, and death is inevitable. It's just one of the facts. Just a matter of time. So when you have this one, you have this one. When you have this one, when you have this one, this one. When you have this one, if you have this one, you have this one, you have therefore this runs. So at the point of death, you have a great vacuum and a great potential, either from karmic retribution, things you've done to other people, or just through habitual tendency to be grasping onto objects, to security, straight on again. So the idea is to cease this, cease this, cease this. Through ceasing this, only those arise, and then birth, rebirth doesn't happen, in brief. So this is a little bit more about the same thing. We go to just a little bit more about the time periods. So the first two link together very strongly, and they are the active previous past. So they always have been going on. They're the past conditioning. And the pre-states of mind, we are now dependent on previous perceptions. So they're always pushing on. So this is active past. How did you get here? Because of last week. So last week is active. So the momentum from previous act, that's why it's okay. So then there's an active bit, which is like what happened before, and all the perceptions and intentions that were built up. Then that is always showering into the present, which is the passive resulting present. And even the health and lack of health and everything that we've got now also includes all that. The re-arriving, generating. So there's always being, it's not always just ideas, it's health, it's everything, where you are on the planet, everything. So you're passively resulting from the past actions. And then the third section is the active present. So there's always being received, like receiving two eyeballs or two ears all the time, a heart. The whole body is always being received all the time. And the mind state, whatever the mind state is. And then the active present is the degree of craving, grasping, and karmic force that's generating, which is happening in the present. That's basically it. And then you have got the future resultant, which is that one, which is the ones I talked about, which will be, because we got born, we will have aging. Because we have aging, we have illness. Because of illness, we have death. Inevitable. It's not just a sort of gloom. It's just a fact of life. Good. All right, so get on to other things. So that's dry, quite complex stuff, but inevitable, and its core teachings. So it then gets told in lots of different ways, because it's one thing to hear it like that, very dry and academic and numerical and abstract, like that. So one of the best ways to see it in bodies is the Dhammapada. And the Dhammapada are 500 or so little mini verses that are 4 lines long,